Welcome back. My guest is Dr. John Shipashek, who is the director of the Ellen G. White Seventh-day Adventist Research Center here at Avondale College. Dr. Shipashek, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, and it's a pleasure to be with you.
I wanted to have you tell us a little bit about the history of this place, but we need to start first with the arrival of Ellen White to Australia. Now, we've talked before, and you've referred to Australia as a mission field at that time.
Yeah, because Ellen White arrived here in December of 1891 in response to the invitation that was extended to her by the missionaries who already arrived in 1885. And it's quite sort of an interesting time because as they progressively developed the Seventh-day Adventist Church here, they saw a need for education to educate young people for work in the mission, on the mission islands.
So at that time, if you were at the General Conference in America, you would have seen Australia as the mission field.
Yes, it was definitely, and it links, actually, it goes a little bit further, because it links with Ellen White's vision, which she was given in 1874, where she talks about that sort of tremendously specific vision in which she saw the message being extended to all parts of the world in a power. And she refers to Oregon, Europe, and Australia. So already at that time, Australia was perceived as the future mission field.
Right. Now, when she came to Australia, she didn't come straight to here. Where did she live first?
Well, initially, she stayed here for a day, and straight away, she moved on to Melbourne. Now, that was the beginning of our sort of work in Melbourne, where the pioneers already set up the canvassing work and the publishing work, and gradually, actually, by 1888, before she arrived, the Australian Conference was organized with 5 churches and 266 members. By the time she arrived, the number of Adventists already in this area, I think it was about 700, both in Australia and New Zealand.
Okay. So how did this specific institution, what we know as Avondale College of Higher Education, how was it begun?
Well, it began with a vision and God's guidance. I've got no doubt about it. What happened in 1894, the church leaders began to search for a place to set up a school. It was a difficult time because it was a time of depression in Australia. And Willie White describes it in a very graphic way. He says, okay, we are about to move into this adventure of searching for and purchase a new land, but we don't even have enough money to see it. Okay. However, they had 2 options. There was one piece of land, 3,000 acres, south of Sydney, near the Illawarra Lake, and the Bradfield Estate. Okay. Now, the interesting thing is that when they arrived here, it again connects with Ellen White's vision, which she describes many years after. In 1898, she talks about this sort of vision where she saw 2 people standing at the Faro criticizing the land. Suggesting that it was infertile, that it was unproductive. And then she said, the angel, which often stood by my side, said to me, do not listen to that because the land is productive. Now, at that point of time, she makes an interesting remark. Let me read to you the quotation, because then she goes back to that experience. That's in 1898. Okay, so she talks about the fact that they arrived here, and when they arrived with that party, okay, she again saw the same people that she saw in the dream standing next to the Pharaoh and criticizing negatively the place. And she said to the guys, no, this place has been sort of indicated to us by God that it is a fertile, that it is productive, so let's go ahead and let's purchase it. So she, in 1898, and even before, she does not refer to the place, okay, and to the spot. I think the emphasis is on God's providence and God's guidance.
Did you say you had a quote for us?
Yeah, I did have a quote for you, and it sort of disappeared, but it'll come up on the screen in just a moment. The next day, we were on the cars, on our way to meet others who were investigating the land. As I was afterward walking on the ground where the trees had been removed, lo, there was a furrow just as I had described it, and the man also who had criticized the appearance of the land. The words were spoken just as I had dreamed.
Okay.
Okay. However, it's quite interesting that she does not refer to a specific spot and place.
Okay.
Okay. Rather to the experience of God's leading and guidance.
Okay. So here we are in many, many years later. What has this Institute of Higher Learning contributed to the mission of the church?
I think quite a lot, but I think we need to see it from a bigger perspective, from a bigger picture. Let me explain. The most productive years in Ellen White's ministry to the church were between 1888 and 1911. During that time, she developed a vision for the church, and during that time also she published all of the important books that we have on hand now. A time of 23 years. 9 years out of that period she spent here in Australia. And I suggest that during that time she develops the principles of what it means to live in the time of eschatological waiting for the coming of Jesus. Interestingly, the college was opened in 1897. In 1897, she begins to review the work on the book Education. And in the book Education, she casts the vision, which is quite powerful. Willie White describes that before the book was published, they sent a letter to Professor Sutherland, and in that letter, they suggest that in no other book has she embraced the theme of the great controversy like in this book. And she develops in the book Education 4 principles: spiritual authenticity, genuine relationship, professional development, and the importance of identity, personal identity. Now, I would like to suggest to you that when you look at the book Education, she talks about a greater vision. Education is not only preparation for service in this life, but in the life to come. She talks about education specifically targeting the betterment of the society, so that young people can develop their identity, their uniqueness, and then move on to the world and share the message of Jesus. And I think this is the contribution that she made here from Avondale College, where they've trained the missionaries for the Pacific Islands.
Yeah, exactly. John, thank you so much for sharing with us today.
Okay.